Millionaire and the CEO were trapped in a cabin, then poor girl whispered, "Can I slip under your blanket?" The howling blizzard outside couldn't compare to the ice in Richard Blackwood's eyes as he stared at the woman who'd ruined his life. "I never thought I'd be trapped with the person who stole everything from me," he whispered, his breath visible in the freezing cabin. But neither of them noticed the young woman watching from the shadows, about to change their lives forever. Emma Chen, CEO of Horizon Technologies, had climbed to the top by being ruthless. The cabin's single fireplace cast dancing shadows across her face as she glared back at Richard. "You think I'm the villain? That's rich coming from you." The temperature was dropping dangerously low, and they had only one blanket between them. Neither would share with the other. That's when they heard it, a soft voice from the corner. "Please, can I slip under your blanket? I'm so cold I can't feel my fingers anymore." They both turned to see Lily, the caretaker's daughter, shivering violently. Her thin jacket was soaked through from hauling firewood before the storm hit. Richard and Emma exchanged glances, momentarily forgetting their hatred. How long had she been there? And why did her simple request make them both feel so ashamed? The annual corporate retreat was supposed to be at a luxury resort in Aspen. Instead, a freak snowstorm had forced their helicopter to make an emergency landing near this remote cabin. The pilot had gone for help, leaving Richard, the self-made tech millionaire, and Emma, the CEO who'd outmaneuvered him for control of his own company, stranded together. "Take it," Richard finally said, handing the blanket to Lily. "I'll try to get the fire going stronger." Emma watched him, confused by this sudden generosity from a man she'd convinced herself was heartless. "I have hand warmers in my emergency kit," she offered, surprising herself. As night fell and the storm intensified, the unlikely trio huddled around the fireplace. The cabin's owner had left minimal supplies, just enough to survive if they worked together. "Why do you two hate each other so much?" Lily asked bluntly, warming her hands around a mug of instant coffee. Richard's jaw tightened. "She orchestrated a hostile takeover of my company. The company I built from nothing. You were running it into the ground," Emma shot back. "The board had no choice. I was grieving my wife." Richard's voice cracked. "You could have given me time." Lily looked between them. "So you're both just hurt people hurting each other?" The simplicity of her observation landed like a punch. The cabin fell silent except for the crackling fire and howling wind. "My parents died when I was 16, Lily said quietly. "I dropped out of school to care for my little brother. I clean cabins like this one to make ends meet." She looked up at them. "You both have so much, but you're wasting it on revenge." As the night wore on, the walls between them began to crumble. Emma revealed how she'd grown up in poverty, fighting for every opportunity. Richard shared how his late wife had been his moral compass, and without her, he'd lost his way. Lily listened, occasionally offering wisdom beyond her years. "Sometimes the universe traps us together for a reason," she said. By morning, the storm had passed, but something had shifted between them. When rescue finally came, Richard made Lily an offer, a full scholarship to finish her education. Emma, not to be outdone, offered her brother the same. 6 months later, Richard and Emma stood together at the grand opening of their joint venture, a non-profit foundation providing education and opportunities for underprivileged youth. Lily was their first success story, now enrolled in college and helping run the foundation. "We were so caught up in our war that we forgot what really matters," Emma said, watching Lily confidently address the crowd. Richard nodded. "Sometimes it takes someone with nothing to show you how much you have." As they stood shoulder to shoulder, their hands brushed. The touch lingered, neither pulling away. The hatred that had once consumed them had transformed into something neither expected: respect, understanding, and perhaps, something more. But the story of how they got there was far more complicated than anyone knew. That night in the cabin, after Lily had fallen asleep wrapped in the blanket near the fire, Richard stepped outside onto the small porch. The storm had momentarily calmed, revealing a sky full of stars between racing clouds. Emma followed him, wrapping her arms around herself against the biting cold. "You should go back inside," Richard said without turning. "You'll freeze out here." "So will you," she replied, but made no move to leave. For a long moment, they stood in silence, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "I didn't know about your wife," Emma finally said. "Not the full story, anyway." Richard's shoulders tensed. Would it have made a difference? "I don't know," she admitted. "Business is business." "But..." She hesitated. "I'm not a monster, Richard." He turned to face her then, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. "Catherine was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 3 months before the takeover. We kept it private. She didn't want pity, and I respected that." His voice was hollow. "I was spending every spare moment at the hospital, not in the boardroom. That's why the company was struggling." Emma felt something crack inside her carefully constructed armor. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Pride," he said simply. "Stupid, stubborn pride." A gust of wind cut through them, and Emma shivered violently. Without thinking, Richard stepped closer, shielding her from the wind with his body. "We should go back inside," he said, but neither moved. "I grew up with nothing," Emma said suddenly. "My mother cleaned houses for rich people in San Francisco. Sometimes she'd take me along during school breaks. I'd see these massive homes, these lives of privilege, and I swore I'd never be on the other side of that equation." Richard studied her face. "And now? Now I wonder if I've become exactly what I hated." She met his gaze. "A person so focused on winning that I forgot to ask what game I was playing." Inside, Lily stirred in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. They both glanced through the window at her. "She reminds me of my sister," Emma said softly. "She died when we were teenagers. Pneumonia. We couldn't afford proper health care." Richard's expression softened. "I'm sorry. That's why I pushed so hard for the company's healthcare initiative. The one you were going to cut." Understanding dawned on Richard's face. "I didn't know. We never bothered to ask each other why, did we? Just assumed the worst." The storm picked up again, driving them back inside. As they quietly settled on opposite sides of the fire, something fundamental had changed between them. The next morning, as they waited for rescue, Lily taught them how to play a card game her father had shown her. For the first time in years, Richard laughed, really laughed. Emma found herself watching him, seeing glimpses of the charismatic founder she'd once admired before their war began. When the rescue team finally arrived, trudging through snow drifts with emergency supplies, Richard surprised everyone by insisting they check Lily first. "Her hands were nearly frostbitten last night," he explained, his tone brooking no argument. As they were being led to the rescue vehicles, Emma pulled Richard aside. "This doesn't have to end here," she said. "The person I've seen these past 24 hours, that's someone I could work with." Richard studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A truce, for starters. And then, we'll see." Back in the city, their colleagues were shocked by the change. The boardroom battles ceased. Instead, Richard and Emma began meeting regularly, first to discuss a potential partnership, then to plan what would become their foundation. Lily became a regular presence in both their lives. Richard hired her brother as an intern at his new startup, while Emma personally mentored Lily as she adjusted to college life. The girl who had once been invisible to them became the bridge between their worlds. There were setbacks, of course. Old habits died hard. During one heated argument over the foundation's direction, Richard stormed out of Emma's office, slamming the door so hard a framed award fell from the wall and shattered. He returned an hour later with a replacement frame and an apology. "Catherine would have hated how I just behaved," he admitted. Emma accepted the frame with a small smile. My sister would have told me to stop being so stubborn. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Richard said, the corner of his mouth lifting. Apparently it takes a teenager to show us how to be adults, Emma replied. 3 months into their partnership, they invited Lily to dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate her first college semester. She arrived looking nervous in a borrowed dress, but her face lit up when she saw them waiting together. You two aren't fighting, are you? She asked immediately, making them both laugh. Not today, Emma assured her. We saved that for yesterday, Richard added with a wink. As they dined, Lily shared stories about her classes and new friends. When she excused herself to the restroom, Richard turned to Emma. She's flourishing, he said softly. Emma nodded. It's amazing what people can do when given a chance. Is that what we're doing? Giving each other a chance? The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken possibilities. Emma met his gaze steadily. I think we are. When Lily returned, she studied them with knowing eyes. You know, my mom used to say that sometimes people come into our lives for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. She smiled. I'm betting on lifetime for you too. By the time the foundation launched, rumors had begun circulating about the nature of Richard and Emma's relationship. They neither confirmed nor denied anything, focused instead on the work. But those closest to them noticed the lingering glances, the casual touches, the way they instinctively moved in sync. At the grand opening, after Lily's speech, Richard found Emma alone on the venue's balcony. She's incredible, he said, joining her at the railing. We did good, Emma agreed. Or rather, she did. We just got out of her way. Richard laughed. Is that what happened? More or less. Emma turned to face him. Do you ever think about that night? When she asked to share the blanket? All the time, he admitted. Such a simple request. So much humanity in it. I was ready to freeze rather than show weakness, Emma said. How ridiculous is that? Richard's hand found hers on the railing. We were both ridiculous. Thankfully, we got better. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they'd been doing it for years instead of minutes. Below them, the foundation celebration continued, a testament to what could happen when people chose connection over conflict. What happens now? Emma asked softly. Richard smiled. Now we keep learning from Lily. We remember what matters. And maybe. He hesitated, then continued with newfound courage, maybe we see where this goes. Emma squeezed his hand. I'd like that. As they rejoined the party, Lily caught sight of their clasped hands and broke into a knowing smile. The girl who had once been cold and forgotten had not only found warmth for herself but had somehow managed to thaw 2 frozen hearts in the process. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the snowstorm, Richard, Emma, and Lily returned to the cabin. They'd purchased it and renovated it into the first of several retreat centers for underprivileged youth. The once sparse interior now glowed with warmth and comfort. Hard to believe this is where it all started, Lily said, running her hand along the mantel where framed photos now stood, one of her college graduation, another of her brother's internship celebration, and a third of Richard and Emma's wedding day, just 3 months prior. Sometimes the most beautiful things begin in the darkest moments, Emma said, leaning into Richard's embrace. Outside, snow began to fall gently. Richard wrapped a blanket around both their shoulders. This time, there's plenty to share. Lily smiled at the couple who had become her family. You know what my favorite part of this story is? That it's still being written. That night, as they sat by the fire sharing stories and dreams, they knew that the real magic wasn't in the cabin or even in their success, it was in the simple truth that sometimes, all it takes is one brave request to change not just a night, but a lifetime. If you felt something watching this story, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us what truly matters in life. We'd love to know, what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below.